Hey everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel. So I'm doing another chess video. This time I'm going over the King's Gambit Declined. There's a trap that can be seen in the King's Gambit Declined opening. Now the King's Gambit, I honestly feel is kind of a risky opening for white. Like, I think there are better openings that white can choose from besides the King's Gambit. It's not a bad opening. It's a pretty good opening actually, but it's not as good as some other openings, like for example the Rai Lopez. I mean, the King's Gambit isn't the worst opening for white, but I mean, it has some risks involved. Moving the F pawn out, exposing the king on this diagonal, so it's kind of a risk involved, not to mention the material loss. So, I mean, that's what a whole point of a gambit is, you sometimes gotta sacrifice material in order to create some advantages for your own side. Material isn't everything after all. Yeah, material isn't everything. But let me show you anyway this trap in the King's Gambit Declined. And what is the King's Gambit Declined? Well, let me show you the King's Gambit to begin with. White plays e4, common move. E4 is probably the most popular opening. Black plays e5, counterattacking, and then white plays f4. So f4 puts these two pawns in a conflict, and black can capture this pawn, which would be the King's Gambit accepted. If he doesn't capture the pawn, it's the King's Gambit Declined. So he can play another move, which would be the King's Gambit Declined. One example is bishop to c5. Now this gives white a slight advantage, but, however, there's a well-known trap that happens if white just takes this pawn. The pawn is undefended. The white pawn at f4 can take the pawn at e5, but this would be a very big mistake, and let me show you what happens if he does that. So, white takes the pawn at e5, he's a pawn up, but, however, this is already losing, and already giving black a 5-point advantage, so white is already losing this game. So, the queen moves to h4, giving check, and there's two ways out of this. One way out is moving the pawn on g3. The pawn on g3 move then allows the black queen to move to e4, capturing the pawn, forking the white king and the rook on h1. So no matter what white does, for example, he can play a knight to e2, and then white takes the rook on, black takes the rook on h1. So already it's a losing opening for him. So it's already a pretty bad position. It's going to take a long time for him to castle. Not to mention the queen and bishop already ruined the king side, so it's not exactly looking good. But the other try to get out of check is even worse. Queen giving check. Alright, the only other move is king to e2, and of course this is losing because queen takes the pawn on e4, and this is checkmate. So that's a trap in the King's Gambit Declined. I hope you understand my points, and yeah, definitely don't take that pawn. So when you see this, the solution is not to take the pawn. Play another move, like knight to f3 instead. This is a much better move if you want to castle kingside, and it develops a piece. That's all I'm going to say, honestly. Stay safe, everybody. Tonva Legend, 826, out.